And an email from Simon James in Exeter. The doors and windows are shut. The phone is off the hook and I'm wearing my Duff Beer novelty slippers, so my feet don't make a sound on my wooden floor, all in anticipation of the review of Transformers 3. I'm even not daring to drink anything, just in case I spew out like a fire hose over the laptop in laughter and cause it to go fizzle, snap, crackle and pop, resulting in me missing the rest of the wondrous wit-entertainment. A word of warning to Dr. K, though. Megan Fox may not be in this one, but please be aware that her replacement, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, is Jason Statham's girlfriend.
Statham.
And you don't want to anger the Stath, otherwise you will become expendable as he gets all cranky on you. From Simon. It's a word of warning.
I know. Can I just say, on the subject of the Transformers review, I did a video thing, me banging my head on the camera. I mean, I think there's a lot to...
You haven't started already, have you?
No.
We haven't got to Transformers.
No, but I just want to say this. There's a lot to be said, and the problem is that that actually a lot of what has to be said is serious. I mean, it's because no matter what else you think about it, there is a moment that we have reached with Transformers 3 which needs to be addressed. Okay. What I'm saying is it needs to be addressed seriously. But for a start, and just bear this in mind, it's not a movie, it's an industrial point. That's what it is.
We look forward to your...
industrial point.
Later. How will we know when we get to the industrial point?
It's the whole thing.
OK. Chris in Leeds says, I took my 12-year-old son to see Transformers 3, Dark of the Moon, 3D, thanks to the teacher strike. George thought it was brilliant, ticked all the boxes, big alien machines, big explosions, big army stuff, fast cars and battles, and that's going to hurt scenes. Very, very entertaining, better than the last effort by miles. And with that spirit of optimism, let's find out what Mark thinks.
Well, it's horrible, vile, vulgar and hideous, but it's important to understand why. The first thing to say is that, as I said before, this isn't a film. You have to understand it as an industrial moment. 3D's going down the toilet. This is the sort of the death throw. You know, as Rome was about to collapse, the Colosseum games got more and more absurd. And they started filling the Colosseum with water and getting ships in and tying people to masts. And, because... basically, this is what happens when civilizations are about to collapse. In the case of Transformers 3, we all know that 3D is going down the pan. So this is the
we
last...
don't, but you keep telling us.
Fine, OK. We'll have this conversation in a year's time, but this is the raving death throw. As far as Transformers 2 is concerned, what happened was, I said it's horrible, overlong, stupid, vulgar, crass, misogynistic and all that stuff. And everyone went, oh, you're just being a critic. Oh, you're just being a critic. Stop complaining about it. A couple of years later, everyone accepts that was right, including the people that made the film. Shia LaBeouf said, yeah, we let people down. We're not very proud of it. Michael Bay himself used the word crap in relation to it. So I'm sorry, I'd like a written apology right now for the fact that I was right back then 2 years ago. And when all the whinging happens now, people go, oh, critics complaining about Transformers 3, critics complaining about Transformers 3. In 2 years' time, can I have the same written apology when you've all accepted that what this is...
The people who disagree with you all talk like that?
They all talk like that. That's how it works. After the horror of the second one...
I only saw the first half of that.
Yeah, you did.
I was interviewing John Turturro.
You didn't even get as far as John Turturro getting in, walking around in his pants. I mean, you got off lightly. They said, look, we've learnt the lessons of them. Lessons of the first one, no discernible plot or script, terrible acting, crass sexualisation of a child's toy, terrible and borderline racist comic interludes, and way too long. So, have they addressed those problems? Well, firstly, the plot. I mean, one of the things that people who like this film said in its favour is it actually has a story. Story is Apollo missions went to the moon in order to get back a bit of an Autobot Decepticon, and the whole thing was a put-up job. So, OK, you go, fine. So that's The Sentinel. That's the Arthur C. Clarke short story on which 2001 was based. This, incidentally, is 15 minutes longer than 2001, a film which went from the beginning of civilization to the birth of a new species. This takes 15 minutes longer. It's also a little bit Capricorn 1, and it does enable them to take the story to places like Chernobyl and say, oh, well, that wasn't, the horror that it actually was. Actually, that was a Transformers-related interlude. And as somebody who's been to the Ukraine, I wonder how that joke is going to play. But there is nominally a plot. At least there is a plot for the first 20 minutes, and then they forget about the plot and they get down to the rest of the stuff. Terrible acting. Well, it's the way that Michael Bay deals with terrible acting is this. It's not, OK, let's have better acting. It's, let's get some people in to do the acting so that we can get on with the rest of the movie. So you have the cameos with John Turturro and Frances McDormand and John Malkovich, and they come on to do some acting. And it's like a special effect. It's like, well, in this bit we need to have some exploding helicopters. In this bit we need to have some acting. Can we get some actors to do some acting? Have you got those actors over there? And I just sincerely hope that those three take the money that they're going to make from Transformers and go off and make the best art house independent movie of all time to purge their souls of having been involved in Transformers. It's like I remember interviewing Tim Robbins, who was in Top Gun, and people forget about that, and talking about how you reconcile those things. And him saying, well, it's interesting how they... No, there's a deal, okay? If you're going to take the money for Transformers, then go and do something, because it is a militaristic, great big nasty piece of work that is also an industrial point, so you have to live with the fact that's what it is. As far as the rest of the acting is concerned, there basically isn't any. Shia LaBeouf, the charisma vacuum, doesn't act, but he has a problem, which is that in the scenes in which he's interacting with CGI robots from another planet that doesn't exist who aren't there, he gets away with it. The big problem with it is that for most of the movie, he's saddled with Rosie Huntington-Whiteley. And this brings us on to the third issue, which is the sexualization of what is basically a kid's toy. And it is the most pernicious and most problematic thing about the Transformers franchise. Essentially, Transformers, robots in disguise, kids' toys, kids' cars that turn into robots. Right? Now, what Michael Bay does is Michael Bay has a pornographic sensibility. I said this before. If Michael Bay wasn't one of the most successful directors in the world, that's what he'd be doing. And he describes his visual style as fruitcaking the frame. That's his phrase, not mine. Obviously, the word fruitcaking.
You've just changed it.
So in the past, we had this Transformers thing, but there was all the Megan Fox stuff and lots of shots of Megan Fox's bottom. In number 2, she was introduced as a shot of her bending over a car. And what? Now, Megan Fox is out of the picture because Megan Fox apparently likened Michael Bay to Hitler, and apparently this caused them to say, you know what, let's not work with her anymore. We now have Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, who is whereas Megan Fox was a pants actress, she's a pants model who he met doing a Victoria's Secret commercial, and who is literally introduced by a shot looking upstairs, which she's walking up, of her bottom. And it's like the camera actually goes, you remember the bottom we had in the first 2 movies? Unfortunately, that bottom called the director Hitler. But here's another one. It's exactly the same, but it probably won't make the same slur about the director. So we're literally introduced, character shot, and it's always very important the way people are introduced. We are introduced with a shot of her bottom, and that tells you what you need to know. But that's how she's been cast, because her role in the movie is to be the walking bottom that Shia LaBeouf has meant to have a relationship with. There's also a line, what happened to the old girlfriend? Oh, she left. But this one, she's the one. Okay, because her bottom's exactly the same. That's fine. So that's how we understand her role.
She's the walking bottom, that's the...
There is a scene in the film in which Rosie Huntington-Whiteley stands next to a car, and a character played by Patrick Dempsey goes, look at the curves on that, eh? Whoa! Look at the curves on that. Whoa! Look at the body on that curves. Whoa! And so Michael Bay is going, look, hey, whoa! Hey, cars! Whoa! Rosie Huntington, whoa! There are shots of her getting out of cars, which have that paparazzi upskirt angle, as I believe it's referred to in the popular tabloid press. So what you have is Bay essentially going, we're taking this franchise, we are pushing the bounds as far as we can in terms of the sort of, the leery pornographic sense, because basically what you all know is women are cars and toy, they're all the same thing, right? They're all just things to be leered at and played with and what? Now, there is a moment in the film in which one of the characters
I do hope we're going to hear a clip.
In which, well, no, let's not. There is a moment in the film in which one of the characters, one of the little Autobot thingies, says, this is a total cluster. And then it cuts, right?
Fruitcake.
This is a cluster fruitcake. Yep. He doesn't say the word fruitcake. This is a 12-rated film in which they use they invoke the word cluster. And in fact, funnily enough, it's one of those moments that defines the film. Cluster fruitcake is a term that has 2 meanings. One of them is to do with the pornographic film industry, which works on the basis of if 2 people getting along famously is sexy, 20 people getting along famously is more sexy. It's also a term that's used for military debacles. I think was coined, I looked this up in the OED, and it turns up in 1969 in reference to Vietnam, okay? And it actually uses this word in a kid's film. In a kid's film, it actually invokes this word. The last 60 minutes of Transformers is a cluster fruitcake. It is, the final battle goes on for 60 minutes. Now, you now have to start understanding that this is what I'm talking about, endpoints. No editor in their right mind would say that a battle sequence should go on for 60 minutes. It's just because you can't tell who's doing what to who, why, where, what. You literally just sit there, and it is, like the word that it has invoked it is essentially a lot of bits and parts and thrusting and banging and smashing, and you don't know who that belongs to or what that belongs to. And every now and then there are great explosions of completely inexplicable fluids and noises of people groaning and grasping, and you're going, I'm sorry, you don't have to be really, really sort of looking for a subtext to see where this is all coming from. Now, worse than that, worse than the sort of the pornographization of all this stuff, Michael Bay thinks he has a sense of humour. What's the essence of comedy? Ask me what the essence of comedy is.
I know this joke, but I'll do it. I say, Mark.
Timing. Okay?
I hadn't even got to the
Nobody,
setup
exactly,
question there.
nobody who does a 60-minute battle sequence has a sense of timing, okay? Michael Bay may be a lot of things, but a comedian is not one of them, and yet somehow he does believe that he's funny. So, the characters, the funny characters, the parents making the jokes about self-abuse, they're back. The small little robots who in the last movie were accused of being borderline racist, they're back doing their, comic witty stuff. We've got, the Scots robot who seems to be constantly angry, the Irish robot who seems to be constantly drunk. We've got the character who's a bit European, so therefore he's a bit light on his feet, maybe. And these are Michael. So not only is Michael Bay doing essentially a softcore sex film, what he's doing is a softcore sex comedy. Interesting industrial point. The most successful 3D movie ever made in terms of money spent and money made back is from the late 1960s, early 1970s, called The Stewardesses. Tagline, these leggy lovelies leap off the screen and into your lap, okay? And it is a softcore sex comedy in 3D. Michael Bay isn't making Avatar, he's making The Stewardesses. The difference is Stewardesses cost about £100,000. This costs something like $250 million, okay? You finally, therefore, get to the end point of all of this, which is he hasn't learned any of the lessons before. He's turned everything up. It's longer than 2001, all the rest of it. So where does this leave us? Here's where it leaves us. The movie will take a massive amount of money. It will briefly be used as a tentpole to say 3D is back on track. It will be used as a stick with which to beat critics. Now, critics, they don't understand anything. They're complaining about Transformers, but and then in 2 years' time, when the whole thing has gone down, when the ship has sunk, when civilization has been reduced to some crying, weeping, wailing child on the side of a river slew of this horrible vulgarization of what was once a children's toy, I want a letter. I want a letter saying, I'm sorry, you were right.
Would a text be enough?
No. Oh, last point. Michael Bay wrote a letter to projectionists, right? Dear projectionists, this movie is very important. Now,
Does he have this pompous style of speaking?
In American. In the past, Stanley Kubrick used to write to projectionists. There's a lovely letter circulating recently from Stanley Kubrick saying, we spent all this time making Barry Lyndon, the costumes, the lighting, the candlelight, we got lenses from NASA, the set design, the mise en scène, all this stuff. Now it's in your hands. It's very important. Please check the focus is right. Please check the framing is right. If you get an LP to play in the middle of the interval, please only play side 2 because side 1's got some repeated cues. Please bear in mind that there are little dots and they're wrong on reel 3 and handing it all over, right? Michael Bay writes a letter to projectionists. It goes like this. Dear projectionist, you spent loads of money putting this equipment in. Turn it up bright. And you go, and with that, I give you my leave because that is the end point. You start with Stanley Kubrick writing to projectionists, asking them to be soft with the focus, and you end up with Michael Bay telling them to turn up to 11 because they spent so much money putting the stuff in. And you know what, Michael? When you get to the multiplexes, there ain't going to be any projectionists to read your letter because they've all lost their jobs due to the miracle of digital projection, which came about thanks to the miracle of 3D. Thank you.